Welcome to Fans Without Borders. My name is Ray.
And I'm Brent.
Alright, so as I'm sure everybody listening knows, we do have to start today's episode on a heavy note, on a very dour note, unfortunately. I talked to Brent about this off air, and I said, you know what, let's just go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off, like right from the beginning, and get right into it, and then we can, get our thoughts and feelings out on it, and then we can proceed to some other stuff that we're going to do later on in the show. But obviously, everybody, we do want to touch on the very sudden and unfortunate passing of actor Chadwick Boseman, whom most of us know more affectionately as T'Challa, King of Wakanda, the Black Panther. Died at the age of 43 as a result of stage 4 colon cancer that apparently he had for 4 years. 4 years. He'd been diagnosed with it in 2016. And, all right, so right off the bat, I think, here, let's just talk for a second. Like, Brent, when you heard this noise, when you first heard this news, how did you hear about it? What was going through your head?
Well, I was watching TV with my wife. It had been an extremely long week at work with lots of extra long hours and just exhausting. And we were just sitting on the couch watching TV. And I got a Twitter DM. And then I got another one from someone else. And I kind of ignored the first one. And the second one caught my eye more. And I paused the show we were watching and just was dumbfounded reading. She's like, what's going on? And I told her, and I just didn't know what to think. Like, at first, it's like, when you get news and it's like you don't believe it, you start doing the checks. Who tweeted this out? What is it from? Is this real? And I'm reading it, and I'm staring at that blue check mark next to his name on the tweet, and I'm like, I just don't believe it. And so then it's like, okay, what other news sites would post this immediately that are trustworthy that I can go verify it? And then I just realized, holy crap, it is real. This is horrific. And the whole thing has just hit me harder than I mean, it was completely unexpected, blindsided me. I mean, I've never met the man, obviously. And to me, let's be real, he's a person in some movies that I like. But it just blindsided me. And it's pretty much all I've been able to think about since then. If you look at my Twitter timeline, it is like 90% tweets or retweets related to that.
Yeah, I mean, it blindsided everybody, for sure. I didn't have, at the time, I was talking to Shonda on the phone, and I happened to have my work computer up, because it was Friday. This happened on Friday night, and so I still had my work computer up, and I had my email up in case Master Control sent me a message about any stuff that was missing from the station. I also am on the email list. In fact, I just got put onto the email list for our news department. One of our photographers, sent an email link from the Detroit Free Press, probably one of our biggest local papers in the area. Sent a link about it to the newsroom, and so that's how I found out. As soon as I saw that link, I then went on Twitter, and I think it was Hollywood Reporter. I think Hollywood Reporter was, or one of them. It had started making the rounds, and we had been sent a direct message as well. I think Clayton sent us a message about it. But yeah, so it sucked all the air out of the room. It really did, because Sean and I were having a general conversation that at the time was uplifting, and then that happened, and I had to be the sour one to tell her, this happened. And at that point, yeah, the both of us were just very, very down, understandably so, as a result of it. And, when it happens at first, it's like, okay, after you confirm that it has happened, then the next question is how, right? How did this happen? What occurred? And to hear what it was disheartening. For me, I will say that there is a degree of fear. It's frightening. He was only 5 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And colon cancer, really, those types of cancers are, they are more, statistically speaking, they do tend to be more prevalent in the black community.
Sure.
So that was one of my first inclinations. Like, oh my, and my family doesn't have a history of that particular type of cancer, but we have had cancer and so I immediately, Stephen Amell popped into my head, F cancer, which I did tweet that because it's like, that's, that is, in the midst of all the other stuff that we've been dealing with this year with the pandemic, that scourge continues and takes good people of all ages from us on a regular basis. And unfortunately, it is now claimed one of our most recent heroes, and it is just very disheartening. Everyone has just been in a very dejected mode over the last 48 hours as a result of it, understandably so.
Yeah, I shared the news with a few people, and I actually had the thought of, oh crap, this is the kind of thing my dad and brother-in-law would send me, because they would, every now and then they send me something they'd think I wouldn't have possibly have already known about related to comic book stuff, and I was like, no, I know this already. I don't need someone else to send it to me. So I sent it to them, and I sent it to a few other friends who I knew enjoyed his work, be that the Marvel stuff or his other movies. I'm like just a fan of Chadwick Boseman. I sent it to a few of them, and I mean, just been down. It's like, I find myself, I wasn't on Twitter for most of the week. Like, I really spot checked and like DM conversations and very little else throughout the week. So you were telling me some stuff before we started today that, like those faux Twitter controversies or discussions that have happened all week over cancel this stupid thing or this stupid argument or whatever. And it's like, I missed almost all of that. But this weekend I have seen pretty much just about nothing but love for Chadwick Boseman, which has been nice to see. And then like reminders of like what we now know was when he would have been going through chemo, when he would have been having surgeries, and he had lost quite a bit of weight. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
And
I absolutely remember it. Yep.
I remember this narrative going around of people just making fun of him for one way or another regarding to the weight loss, just trashing him, trashing his looks, body shaming him, whatever you want to call it. And then it's like, holy crap, he was literally fighting cancer during all that time. Like when I saw those pictures, I assumed it's for a movie role that I just don't know what movie is coming out. Like, I didn't think much of it. Actors go on massive weight changes on a semi-regular basis. Like, it's not uncommon to hear, obviously. I had assumed it was one of those cases. And now I'm thinking back, and I'm like, he's done things like where he's talked about meeting kids who were terminal and, like, what that meant to him. And you go back and you watch those clips, and it's just crushing to know, like, when those were filmed, he was in the middle of it. It's like, he went through all this, and he still did Black Panther. He still did Infinity War. He still did Endgame. He did all the press for it. He did 21 Bridges. He did a couple other movies.
The Five Bloods.
Five Bloods. There's something, I'm forgetting its name off the top of my head, but there was some other movie with him in it that I've had in my Netflix queue for a couple months now. I just haven't watched it yet. It's probably going to move up my list. But it's like, he still did all of this stuff in the middle of it, and I just can't imagine, like, what that was like. And there's this one quote about, he's like, someone said to him, oh, you look a little tired. And he's like, you don't know the half of it, but someday I'm going to live to tell you this whole story. And it's like, blindsided. But so much respect for him that he did it privately, let him do it his way. And it's like, I have seen some people upset that, like, somehow he owed it to the fans to tell. And, like, that infuriates me. It's like, he didn't owe us jack.
Not at all. No.
Just blew my mind, the whole thing. And it's super, it really hit me hard.
No, it's I miss that all that BS with respect to people making fun of his weight. But I was one of the people that noticed how gaunt he was looking, and was very. I got concerned, right, when you see such a because it's one thing when you see Bale do it, because we've seen Christian Bale do it, right?
Yeah,
or you've seen
multiple times.
Exactly. We hadn't seen that from him in any of his roles that he had played. So it was like, is there something up? And I didn't know. Like, none of us knew. And no, he gets all manner of respect for handling it privately. As much as this blindsides all of us, I think part of me does take some comfort, as much as anyone could take, in knowing that It clearly did not blindside his family. His family knew,
Right.
and it's tough. I mean, how do you prepare for anything like that as a family? But at least, I'd read that he did pass with his wife and family by his side, so he wasn't alone, and it wasn't just this sudden thing, right? And, if we were to take any comfort from that, it was that he wasn't alone, and that it was something that, at least on a personal level, he was aware of. But, my God, the dude was a real-life superhero.
Yes.
How to do all of those films? I mean, his entire Marvel Cinematic Universe presence is in the middle of stage 4 cancer. In the middle of him getting treatments. He's still doing the work. He's still training so that he can look like a super soldier that's supposed to be on the same level of Captain America. That's his power set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's how he has to look. That's what he put himself through. And it's one of those cases where, I remember saw some interviews in the past where he talked about knowing your purpose on this earth and knowing like what you were meant to do on this earth. And clearly he had a very clear purpose, a very clear idea of what his purpose was, and he was devoted to that. And he was devoted to the craft. And, unfortunately, a lot of his movies, outside of Black Panther and all of his MCU stuff, the only other movie of his I've seen to this point is Draft Day, which he wasn't in Draft Day very long, but his character was literally the plot device of the entire film. I like that movie, Draft Day. It's an extremely unrealistic portrayal of the NFL draft, because what happens in that movie would never happen in real life. But it's an entertaining movie, and his character in that movie is like the heart and soul of the film in terms of like what his character represents and what he does. But I remember I blogged about, I had to blog about this before I went to bed that night, and I did. I wrote an in memoriam piece. I've done that a couple of times on Flightcast, and I couldn't not do one for him. Because the first thing that popped in my head was I remember how Shonda and I felt during Civil War. First time we saw Civil War, and for all of the hype that was going into that film with all the Avengers and everybody that was on screen, for the both of us, Black Panther stole the show.
Sure.
Absolutely stole the show. And one of the things that hit us culturally, and it started with that movie. It did not start with Black Panther. It started with Civil War. When he's there and the Wakandans are there, and especially that mid-credit scene, where it pans out and shows you the giant panther statue. The both of us looked at each other and were like, we want to see Wakanda right now. And that became our most anticipated movie for the next 2 years. We didn't want to see... Yes, we saw Doctor Strange. Yes, we saw all the movies that came out in 2017. We wanted Black Panther immediately.
Right.
And so when the movie came out in 2018, the effect that had... I remember, I've mentioned this before, I brought this up in a review when we did it way back when, but the two school groups that were there, the teachers that brought their classes there, and seeing all of the... Listen, I don't know this for certain, but all of these older black people that I'm fairly certain have never watched a comic book movie in their life. I know they weren't there because they were following up on the Infinity Saga, and they're dressed in some, either they're dressed in suit and tie and dress, or they're wearing dashikis and, traditional African garb. And it was just one of those movies, Brent, culturally speaking, that we all felt like, if there's a comic book movie that I know my entire family has seen, it's that one.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a phenomenon. Absolutely. And that's why we say representation matters. That right there is why we say representation matters.
Very much so. And I think that's a big part of why this hits harder, is because it feels like that representation took a blow. And not a blow in terms of the representation itself, but in terms of losing a hero to that representation, somebody that blazed a new trail for representation, that movie, for all of the criticisms and gripes that anybody may have with it, that movie proved beyond the shadow of a doubt that black-dominated casts in a big-budget film can dominate at the box office, and it did.
Absolutely.
It absolutely dominated. It ruled the roost at the box office. No one can take that away from Chadwick Boseman and Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan and Letitia Wright and the entire rest of that cast. Denai Guerrera, just everybody involved in Angela Bassett, that's the name I couldn't think of. Everybody involved in that entire film, starting with Chadwick Boseman, like that was a cultural thing, and he understood that. He understood the cultural impact that role had, and so now, the one thing I did see, Brent, like I missed the whole thing of people making fun of him, which those people can go to hell as far as I'm concerned. But like, I do recall, he would do the Wakanda Forever,
mm-hmm.
and he would look tired.
Yes,
he would look like he was, and so there was a speculation that he was tired of doing that. Now he was on a radio broadcast with Charlemagne the God and said, "No, I'm not tired of doing it as a phenomenon." He said he didn't like doing it as performance art,
which I get.
Oh, I totally. You know what it's like? It's like I don't know if you remember this, but when Aquaman came out, a reporter asked Jason Momoa to do the haka.
Yeah, which is that is not for our entertainment.
Exactly.
It is. I have seen those before in person in scenarios where they really were for an entertainment and for an informative thing. Like in Hawaii, I've seen things, not the exact one he does, but similar items. And yes, they are amazing, beautiful pieces of art, but that's not what it is to them. It is something very important to their cultural. Oh my God, the Momoa! I remember that happening. Oh, that was so ugly.
So it was, and his wife Lisa Bonet took visible and public exception to that, which I couldn't blame her one bit. That's what Chadwick Boseman was talking about. Because the haka for their culture, this is what it is for black people. It is. This is what it's the same thing for us, and he didn't feel like that was the only thing that bothered him, was doing it as performance art. As far as him doing it, he didn't have a problem returning the salute to anybody that did it for him. But now we know the real reason that he looked like that. The real reason that he was tired. It was because of everything that he was battling behind the scenes, and it really just, I mean, it's gut-wrenching, it's heartbreaking, it's awful. 43 is way too flippin' young for somebody to leave this earth. It just is. It's not fair. There's nothing even remotely fair about this at all. But the body of work that he put together in just 10 years, 12 years of his career, and just what he did in the last 4 years. I mean, you're talking about somebody that not only played T'Challa as incredibly as he did, but he played Thurgood Marshall in a movie I still need to see. He played, Thurgood Marshall, for people who don't know, first black Supreme Court justice. He played James Brown. This is 2014. Got on up, and of course Jackie Brown. Or not Jackie Brown, Jackie Robinson in 42. Of course that.
Which I still need to see.
Yes, same here.
And I almost bought it and watched it last night. Ended up not, but I didn't think I'd be able to stay awake long enough for it. And when I watch it, I want to be able to watch it. But
yeah.
No, he did such an amazing... I mean, the last thing I saw him in was 21 Bridges, which I was excited for 21 Bridges when I saw the trailers. I thought it looked pretty cool, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, I would encourage people to see it. See it as part of celebrating the work he's done. It's a good movie. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I'm glad I got to see it. Because, I mean, that wasn't that long before the theater shut down, and I mean, the Marvel movies alone, they're enough for my fandom, but he did so much more beyond those. And 21 Bridges is, to date, the only other movie I've seen with him in it outside of Marvel, but it's not going to stay that way. I am going to watch others. So, you're right, though. We had to talk about this first. We couldn't.
Yeah. And
the rest of the episode, let's be fair, it's totally inconsequential to all of this, but I would never make it through an entire episode of just this. So
no, I defy Bloods.
Yep, that one is on my list now.
Scott and I watched it for Fans Without Borders Plus, and that was the last role that I saw him in. And you know what? Even then, I think that I can't remember if Scott and I feel like we did comment on it in the review where he looked different.
Well,
He
for what it's
looked
worth,
different even in that movie.
I think he has filmed another movie that hasn't come out yet. I could be mistaken.
No, you're right. There's a thing. It's a play adaptation, and now I am totally going to look it up because I saw it. It's in production. Like I think it's in post production at the moment.
And while you do that, I'll mention we should get to see him, sort of, or at least hear him from Marvel one more time because of Marvel What If. That said, I've seen pictures of his character and What If. I don't know definitively that he did have the opportunity to do the voiceover for it already. So if he did, then we'll get one more performance from him there as well.
There is a Netflix film, another Netflix film, because of course The Five Bloods was Netflix, and he also did. There's another Netflix movie that came out called Message from the King that I was interested in when I first heard that it came out.
That's the one that I've had on my list for a while. And like I was looking at his movies on Netflix and I'm like, wait, this is already, and I checked, yep, it's already like on my list. I just hadn't watched it. I mean, just seeing him, I was like, okay, and then I read what it's about. I'm like, yeah, this would be an entertaining time. I'll watch it, but
this new one that we're gonna see, it's called Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. It's an August Wilson adaptation. He will be he's co-starring in it, Chadwick, with Viola Davis. And also Glynn Turman, who people who may not know that name, you'd know him from A Different World and maybe even from the movie Super 8. A black character actor, Cooley High. If anybody is old enough to remember Cooley High, he was in that as well. But yeah, that is going to be that's going to be Chadwick Boseman's last live action on screen role that we will see him in. So I'm not sure when that's going to be released, but it's a Denzel Washington produced film. Brentford Marsalis is doing the music. Yeah, this is definitely on my list for sure. I mean, it probably would have been before any of this, but it definitely is now.
I do want to mention that ABC, as we're recording this on Sunday, August 30th, ABC tonight at 8 Eastern is playing Black Panther commercial free, followed by a special called Chadwick Boseman, a tribute for a King. Obviously, by the time you're watching this, hearing this, that special has already happened. But I just wanted to make people aware of it. Chadwick Boseman, a tribute for a King, so you can go back and, because I'm sure that kind of thing will be on like ABC's On Demand app or whatever, so you can go back and catch it if you missed it live. Which I will probably, I probably won't see it today, but I will try and watch that as well. So and that news just came out this morning, so I didn't know if you had seen that yet, Ray, or not. But
no, I did see it earlier. And I don't want to. I know that we've been talking for a minute here about a very sad subject, but I do want to end it on a bit of a more uplifting part to say that for people who, and I know plenty of people have rewatched Black Panther in the last day or two.
I have not,
but you're going to.
I thought about it, and I did not think I could do it.
Well, and completely understandable. What I would say is this, someone posted, I've seen a few people post this on Twitter, and this isn't from Black Panther, but it goes back to the scene where he's speaking to Natasha after T'Chaka died in the explosion.
Yes.
When he talks about how for his people, death is not the end, it's really more of a passing over. I would encourage people, whatever your faith, spirituality, whatever it is, I would encourage people to find some solace in that message, which is further reinforced in Black Panther, because we see the other side in Black Panther. We see him talk to his father. We see the communication with Bast and the all of that he spoke about in that film, and to know that regardless of your orientations, his legacy remains and will continue to be there for us. We will have his body of work to always enjoy. He will always be a symbol of heroism,
absolutely,
on screen and off screen. Probably my favorite moment off screen for him was the Jimmy Fallon thing. I don't know if you saw that. This was the thing. That
yes, it's fantastic. I
this
saw it when
was,
it aired, and it's
so did I.
So good, so good.
I saw it when it aired. For people that don't know what it is, you probably do, but just in case you don't, when Black Panther came out in theaters, they literally did this thing where they had black people, walk up to a poster, and it's like they pretended like they were recording a video to speak their thoughts, how they felt about the movie, how it affected them, and you hear all of these truthful, impassioned stories. And what made the moment awesome is, of course, Fallon and Chadwick Boseman are standing behind a red screen or a red curtain, and at the end of it, they come out and surprise whoever it is, so and cool. Hey, here it is, and of course they do the salute. And I remember the funniest one from that was the guy who said he saw it 4 times. Like he said he saw it 3 or 4 times, and quoted that one of them was bootleg.
Yes, I love that one.
And they were cracking up about it behind this. They were cracking up about it behind the curtain, and then he comes in and is like, "Wait, you got bootleg my movie?" And totally caught him off guard. Pronounced his name right because he had a crazy name.
So good.
And he pronounced right. But just that type of energy, right? That never leaves us. We will always have that. And of course, people bring up the hilarious Saturday Night Live Jeopardy sketch.
Yep. I saw that I didn't watch it again, but I saw it getting posted again this weekend. And I have seen it before, and it is absolutely worth your time. If you haven't seen either of these, the SNL thing is hilarious. The Jimmy Fallon thing is heartwarming. And both would be worth watching if you haven't seen them.
Definitely. But I feel, should all be fortunate that we were able to enjoy his work and his performance for the time that he was here, and he shall remain strong in all of our thoughts, and his legacy will always be there for us. I saw this. There are little black children that now don't have to ask the question about superheroes, about whether or not a superhero can look like them.
Right. Because
of him, because of his presence, and that will never go away. That can never be taken away. We will never lose that. So, rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman.
Well, with that, let's talk about far less important things. We need a bit of we need some uplift. We do. So. Let's talk about DC FanDome a little more. I haven't talked about DC FanDome enough. I was talking with you and the other guys on it all day during the event. You and I recorded for, I don't know, I think the produced episode was close to an hour 45, something like that. And then I hopped on and talked about it more with the DC Alliance guys. Let's talk about more DC FanDome stuff. It was a huge success. It was a huge success. They got to do it again. They have to. They don't have a choice. It was too good. All the trailers combined for 150 million views, basically over the weekend across the official channels. Of course, it doesn't count any accounts who uploaded it into their own channels. But the actual Hall of Heroes event, like the live event, was 22 million views. Now, I did get across 220 countries worldwide. That's fantastic. And yes, Travis, I hear you saying they can do this worldwide, but not HBO Max. I hear you. I know you're saying it, but worldwide, 22 million views. We did get one question about, and forgive me, I don't remember who sent it in, but it was what constitutes a view? Is it every time you click on the browser? He said like he watched segments here and there, but not all of it straight through. Was it multiple views or one? Typically, I can tell you these things. It's like it's based off your IP address, and it's based off hits from your IP address. And if it's like several within a short time span, that would not be considered separate views, like every time you refresh a page or whatever. But with gaps in between, and I don't know how large those gaps have to be. Do they measure in minutes, hours, what? That it would be. So like, just for comparison's sake, if I download an episode of Fans Without Borders, the download statistic in our host goes up by 1. If I delete it and download it again within a couple minutes, that doesn't change it because it views it as the same IP address and it's the same instance. But if I do it again a couple days later, it would go up by 1. But regardless, 22 million views, that they can measure it that way. That's the number DC is saying they got just on their that's just on their website, because I think I thought I saw references to it actually being available elsewhere too. Somebody was watching it through Xbox. I don't know if they just went to the browser or what, but it's like, I mean, amazing. Just 22 million views, 150 million views for the trailers. I gotta wonder how many of those are for that Batman one, because it definitely dominated the conversation. But Ray, what do you think about that success?
You're right about that trailer. I've said this before, and I make no apologies for this. And I think the others in the network actually do agree with me on this. That Batman trailer stole the show.
It did.
It did. As much as we all loved the Snyder Cut trailer, we did. The Batman trailer absolutely is. I've lost count how many times I've watched that trailer. As far as the FanDome event itself, this might even exceed the best case scenario that any of us were thinking for DC FanDome. And you're right, they're locked in. You can't not repeat this success. You can't not repeat this formula. You have to. This now has to become your thing. And even when cons come back, and quite honestly, this is people have talked about this. Like, okay, we don't know what the future of in-person cons are going to be. We're not certain. And you and I had talked before on this show, before any kind of pandemic whatsoever, we talked about the waning importance of San Diego Comic-Con. Mm-hmm. And how the perception of that event really is changing. I know the Comic-Con people and the people that get to go to San Diego don't want to hear this, but we were already seeing, Warner Brothers already wasn't going to be there before there was a pandemic. They already made it. Remember the big splash that Wonder Woman 1984 made at CCXP? I think Birds of Prey was there as well, if I'm not mistaken. I think they were both there.
They were, but it was the Wonder Woman stuff that got broadcast on YouTube that we all could, because I watched it with my wife and daughter, and it's like, that's what I want. That's what I've wanted Comic-Con to do for years, is let me, who physically can't go, partake. I'll pay for it. I didn't have to pay for it, but I would have paid for it. FanDome, I would pay for FanDome next year. Like, I'll buy a ticket. Absolutely.
It's funny you bring that up, because I don't remember, I don't know if you were part of this, but the question was, Corey Sims posed that question to us on Twitter earlier this week. Does Warner Media try to put this behind a paywall next year? Do they try to actually get some financial bet? He thinks they will. The reason that I disagree with that is because you and I will pay for it. I think everybody on this network will pay for it. We're not the ones that you necessarily need to schmooze. It's that general audience that you need to get in there. Putting things behind a paywall for the general audience can be tricky. I'm not saying you shouldn't capitalize monetarily at all, because quite honestly, if you look at what Scott just bought from FanDome alone, that's what so he was like, okay, Corey was like, if you charge a fee, what do you think if they would charge a fee? And I was like, well, that would depend on what the fee would get me. Is it getting me swag? Is it getting me exclusive stuff that only people at the cons can get? Which San Diego Comic-Con has been doing that for years. You know how infuriating it is to know that there are Lego figures I can't get, and steel books that I can't get because only the people at San Diego Comic-Con can get them. If it's stuff like that, oh yeah, sign me up. I will. Yes, credit card number. Shut up and take my money. Absolutely. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, there's one paywall I think they should do. Maybe do it free for that. Maybe do what they did with this. It's free for the first day. But if you want to rewatch it, and I have heard since, maybe it was Scott, I don't know, someone said they are starting to see some of the panels go up on like official YouTube channels, but I have not had time to even look. But people were recording it and posting them to YouTube. And if you wanted to rewatch something or re-listen to just the audio of something, like I wanted to do, hypothetically, I may have gotten a copy of those so I could do it, but I have to jump through hoops to do that. You know, it would be awesome if they just threw it into DC Universe or HBO Max. DC Universe, if it's going to stay around with media content at all, if it's not 100% comics, or if it is, if all media, including the back catalog, is going to HBO Max, put it on HBO Max. Like, put it up live for everybody, DCFanDome.com. And then the next day, post it to HBO Max for people who want to go back to it and jump to specific panels. Oh, you just wanted to jump to the Multiverse 101 panel because you missed that one? Well, here, you can do, make it a TV show in HBO Max, and just episode 1 is the first panel, episode 2 is the second panel. That I think that kind of paywall would be great. I would pay for it, just period, as is. Only get to see it all one. Yeah, I would pay for it. But you're right. You make a great point. Not everybody would. The general audience wouldn't necessarily pay for it. A lot of the general audience would think all they care about are the trailers. They don't care about everything that Zack Snyder or Patty Jenkins said about their movies. They just want to say, show me the trailer. And I get that. And for those people, it's up on YouTube. I personally would be fine with paying for it regardless. I will absolutely pay for it if they were to go that way. And if they locked it behind HBO Max, like, I would be like, it's the kind of thing I would subscribe for if I had to. Like, I think they have this platform, and it just, if nothing else, it puts more content. And you know what? It might be fun in 3 or 4 years to go back and look at these panels and compare them to how things shook out. Compare them to how things went out. Like, what were they talking about in 2020? And then see, like, you know, like the Flash concept art, for example. Like, see them show that and talk about that, and then go back and see what the final iteration of it looks like and compare. And yeah, sure, you can always compare the still photos, but I mean, to really hear what the directors and the actors had to say, I think it'd be fun to go back and look over time.
I agree. Seeing the progression of how the conversation evolves can be a really interesting window into everybody's psyche and how things change. I think that what you're talking about in terms of them putting stuff on HBO Max and DC Universe, I think there may definitely be some juice to that, because Corey Sims also brought this to my attention, and I can't find his original tweet because Twitter's being a whatever right now. But I did find a bleeding cool piece that indicated that Warner Media has apparently jumped on this with respect to trademark pursuing. And it looks like Warner Media is attempting to trademark HBO FanDome, Max FanDome, Warner FanDome, Warner Brothers FanDome, Warner Media FanDome, HBO Max FanDome, and HBO FanDome. So FanDome, if Warner Media has their way, will be their own proprietary phrase.
Good, they earned it. They earned it.
Yes,
I want Marvel to have a Marvel FanDome. Marvel, you got to come up with your own name. You got to come up with something else, and that's fine. This is Warner Brothers. This is DC's. This is DC's that the rest of Warner Brothers gets to piggyback on, because and I think that's wonderful.
Well, and it makes perfect sense. Your biggest IP, and can we just go ahead and say that DC is Warner Media's biggest IP? I don't think.
What else would there be?
Well, I'm just thinking of the Harry Potter fans that are like trying to.
Yeah, you know what? I love Harry Potter. Sure, movies 1 through 8, absolutely. Not anymore. Those movies are done, and the Fantastic Beasts series has not been on the same level. So,
fair enough.
Maybe when Harry Potter was at its heyday, that it was, but it's not anymore.
True, and it's still. I mean, I'm not saying that Harry Potter can't be an expansive world of characters. DC is. DC's been an expansive world of characters for generations now. But it makes sense that your biggest IP would start the train going to extend to the rest of your catalog. So we could be seeing events like FanDome could become this could become Warner Media's thing. Mm-hmm. Could absolutely, and not just for DC, but across all of their platforms. So I think it is entirely, sure. You know, they put the I did notice that HBO Max's YouTube channel has posted the entirety of the Snyder Cut panel.
Oh, really?
All of it. Yes, all of it is officially on the HBO Max YouTube, start to finish.
Considering HBO Max is responsible for that, good. I'm glad they're making it available for people to see. And I mean, I hope that this will happen with others, but at least some of that. I mean, that just sets a precedent that they're at least looking at that as an option to put it out there for people who couldn't see it. And that just drums up interest in the event. Oh, I couldn't go that day, but I really wanted to see the Snyder panel. Oh, I can see the Snyder panel now. And so, yeah, it was 22 million views for that day. But how many more views are they getting by having it posted? Absolutely great move.
Yeah. So, no, it's rousing success, and just it's almost kind of weird to be in this place with so much positive hype. like across the board, like in our circles regarding DC properties. It feels like, in many ways, Brent, it feels like we've had to kind of claw a little bit for that over the last couple of years. Not that there haven't been high points for DC, but this is clearly the apex for DC and Warner Media in general at this point. So, yeah, I mean, looks like a very, very bright future ahead for them. So, yeah, can't wait for next year's FanDome.
Well, before we jump to some questions and stuff, a couple things from an article about fandom I want to touch on from Variety. They sent special kits to the host and the panelist who were appearing like who we saw with like green screens and cameras and directions on set it up this way. And like, that's like what I talked about that I wanted to happen at Comic-Con at home. It's like, can they not send them a better microphone? You could buy a $50 microphone that's going to sound better. It's like, they could do it. And so I loved reading that they did this.
They listened to our show.
They did. They absolutely did. It was all us. Yes. I thought it was interesting that we got a timeline for when it was filmed or recorded. According to this Variety article, the vast bulk of it was over a 2-week period towards the end of July, which kind of gives you we could go back to what news we heard about things, but then I think does that predate the Keaton news or the Keaton rumors? I'm not sure. Oh, no, that's not because they had the concept art, but it predates the Ben Affleck news coming to the Flash for sure, because that was just a few days earlier. I did see a few people who were disappointed they didn't put that in, and yes, technically they maybe would have had time to do something, but this explains to me why they didn't, because they wanted the whole thing, for at least the bulk of it, to be in the can. And then they did talk about moving the other stuff, and they just said, quote, "There's just so much programming. The rest of DC FanDome presentation, dubbed Explore the Multiverse, is now going to debut September 12th as an on-demand event." And here's the part that's really getting me. "With all panels and programming going live at once," according to this Variety article, which is not what I thought it was going to be. And I will be honest, I have not looked at the schedule page for that yet. I had assumed it was going to be a similar setup. Here's the Legends panel, followed by the Black Lightning panel, followed by the whatever.
No, they said it was going to be on demand.
Which is even better, because now it means I don't have to ship the kids off for 8 hours. I can just watch the ones I want to watch, and I absolutely will, and I can watch it on my schedule that works for me better. So it's like, oh, my kids are napping or playing outside or something. Well, I can squeeze in a panel. So
they said that when they first split the. You didn't.
I missed that news thing.
Okay, all right.
But when the split happened, I heard about it from you guys in our chat talking about it.
Okay.
And that's when I heard about the split even happening. And again, work has just been insane the last few weeks. So there are times when I'm at work, I can check in on Twitter and stuff, and there's times when I can't. And I'm in a cycle of I almost don't have time for it unless it's my lunch break. And so you guys told me that the split was even happening.
Yeah, they had specifically used the phrase "on demand," which so the idea is, and they were building as this: you can build your own schedule, right? Like it's on your time, right? And what I'm hearing, this is all just hearsay. Like if you believe if anybody treats somebody like Boss Logic as a source, which to be fair,
he's getting access.
He's getting access. He did do the Black Adam image with Jim Lee. Okay, so it's not like he doesn't have access. There may be other news. This is just rumors. There may be other big news that we get on the 12th. Because I think the perception that we had initially is this, okay, they're moving all the TV shows to the 12th. Outside of the Titans panel and the Flash Season 7 panel, all of the other TV stuff, including the Black Lightning panel I really want to see, that's hosted by Robert Townsend, got moved to the 12th. But it is, from what we're hearing, there may be some other big news that we get on the 12th as well, and it is entirely possible that DC is treating the 12th as though, oh no, this is still going to be a big event, the 12th is still something that you should pay attention to. We're also waiting, I think, we had heard that Val Kilmer had said he was going to be on one of these panels. I think clearly that's going to be on the 12th.
Yeah, because he wasn't there the other day. Lots of people were questioning that. You're saying there's even the possibility of news, and I'm like, ooh, I'm on And Brightest Day watching in. So,
you know what? I can't say you shouldn't be.
I am. Can't say you shouldn't on be. And Brightest Day watch now. So
I like that. And Brightest
Hope
Day
is
watch.
alive.
I like that. And Brightest Day watch. That's good. Yeah. So September 12th. I mean, you're right. It's not going to be the con setup that we had on the 22nd, but it's still going to be a day that we're going to be watching a ton of videos for sure. So yeah. I gotta tell you, man, Kalar and Warner Media, they're playing this as perfectly as they possibly could play it with respect to the situation. And you want to talk about perspective. You mentioned this earlier about seeing how different perspectives are. Imagine a year or so ago, maybe not even a year ago, people, I saw this all the time on Twitter. Warner Brothers has the worst PR on the planet.
Not
they
anymore.
never control the narrative. They don't do this right. They don't do that right. Complete 180, complete night and day. It's amazing. It really is.
Oh, can I just say, the Doom Patrol Twitter account is becoming a joy to me, because I love the fake Twitter rivalries like Wendy's and Subway or whatever, and I have now seen the Doom Patrol account throw some shade Marvel's way, good-natured, fun way. Of course, you see people freaking out, oh my gosh, this is a verified Warner Brothers account. Blah, blah. And I'm like,
whatever.
Are you kidding? It's hilarious. I love it. And I'm like, please, like, Doom Patrol and somebody from Marvel, anybody from Marvel, please start a rivalry. Please make it happen.
Oh no!
It's so funny. So I followed the Doom Patrol Twitter account. I'm like, I've never had interest in your account before, but I do now, because if you're gonna start making me laugh like this, if you're gonna be like a Wendy's, I am in.
No, that account's been funny for the last couple of weeks, and yes, they did get into it a bit with Wendy's like a couple of days ago. That did happen.
Yep.
Which it's all for comedic effect.
Wendy's said that Cliff could get all he can eat nuggets or something like that, and I'm like,
oh. They were Doom Patrol was asking for it, and they said Wendy's was like, he can have as many as he can taste. And Doom Patrol's like, that's a low blow. That's such a low blow. And it's like, oh my goodness.
I love that stuff. I love it when those accounts have some fun with it. And that's amazing.
That's when Twitter can be fun.
Yeah.
That's when Twitter can actually... Twitter is the cesspool, and it's awful 75% of the time. 25% of the time, it can be awesome like that. So, yes, I'm totally with you on that. Yes. And get HBO Asia's account in there. Get all the other fun Twitter accounts. Get them all in there. Yes, for sure. That'd be great.
I want to make one fandom correction to something I said last week on the episode that Chris Balga from Marvel Alliance pointed out to me. He said, I had commented during the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League section that this was the speedster Boomerang, the son of the other Boomerang, who I believed was introduced in Infinite Crisis. No, that's not the case. He came around first in Identity Crisis. So I got my crises mixed up, which, I mean... Any event of note of importance of DC tends to have Crisis in the name. I'm going to give myself a pass on that one, but I wanted to mention it just in case you were out there, someone was looking for it. It is in and tied into Identity Crisis that we first saw him show up.
I'm surprised they don't have the word Crisis trademarked.
Well, they should.
Well, you're right. Because
Crisis on Infinite Earths, Identity Crisis, Infinite Crisis, Final Crisis. I feel like I'm forgetting Crisis on Earth X. Crisis in... I'm forgetting others, but yes. I wanted to mention that.
Yeah. No, it's extended. It's not just the books. It's on television now. Mm-hmm. And how long will it be before we get a Crisis movie? That's happening. Crisis movie is going to happen at some point.
I will take the under on 10 years.
Yes, I'll agree with that totally.
And I might even be willing to take the under on 5 if I did not already know what like the next 3 years were. But
right,
exactly. I'll take the under on 10. Anyway, before we sign off today, should we take a few listener questions?
Yes, why not?
All right. Well, let's start off with this one from Alexander, who says he's seen some people online saying that the Matt Reeves Batman is like Nolan, and thank God it's not like Snyder and Affleck's. Whereas he's seeing other people say that Reeves Batman is more like Snyder and Affleck, and thank God it's not like Nolan. Wants to know where we stand on that. So where would you fit Matt Reeves in between the Batfleck version and the Bale version of Batman's? Where would you slot him if you had to, I guess?
It's both, and I love it. I love that it's both because, I mean, clearly, and I have seen, bring up Corey Sims again, like he and a number of people have been kind of like there have been proponents of the Dark Knight trilogy that have been kind of on the defensive this past week because so much praise has been given to the Reeves Batman trailer, and they have seen that some of it has been to the detriment of the Dark Knight trilogy. And they're like, well, no, we all like this trilogy. Why are we dogging it now? Well, I am not dogging it at all.
I actually bought it for the first time last weekend.
Really?
I didn't have it on iTunes, and I was like, okay. When I realized I didn't have it, I'm like, next time it goes on sale, because I've seen it on sale for $15 for the 3-pack, I'm going to pick it up. And it did last weekend, and so I finally was like, there's my chance, I'm buying it.
It's a fantastic trilogy. I really don't think that this is... Because it seemed to me like he was concerned of this going the X-Men route, where like the treatment of the X-Men franchise in the wake of... the MCU and the Fox purchase, and I don't think that's going to be the case.
Well, the difference
at
is
all.
X-Men put out some stinkers, and I know some people disagree. I don't think there's a stinker among the Nolan trilogy.
There are people who argue Dark Knight Rises. I disagree. I would agree. I think that entire trilogy is very strong. But that's the beauty of the Matt Reeves trailer is we see elements of that grit and kind of that nihilism that we saw in the Dark Knight trilogy. But I'm sorry, you can't tell me that the scene where he's beating the crap out of that thug, you can't tell me that's not Martha Rescue. Because it is.
Right.
Someone timed it. I don't know if you saw. I shared this GIF. There's a point in the Martha Rescue where he's already got a thug on the ground and he's giving him like 3 extra punches.
I have not.
Someone timed this with the extra punches that Pattinson's Batman is giving the thug after he gets him on the ground, and it's almost identical.
Do you have this?
I shared it. It's on.
I'll dig back through your tweets and find it.
I absolutely shared it because I said this was like a day or two after the trailer came out because basically my response was it's like Reeves watched the warehouse scene and determined that this is how all Batman combat should look. This is how we should fight going forward. So that part is absolutely Batfleck. The I am vengeance, that is Batfleck.
I remember in 2014 with Winter Soldier, that opening scene of Captain America running across the yacht and taking out all those thugs, and people saying like that's the way Batman should fight. Like that scene specifically, people have attributed. And then the Martha Rescue happens, and it's like, okay, so it's like they took that and cranked it up to another level. I would answer this question basically the same way as you. It looks like it has the real world aspect of there's no hint that this Batman is in a role that Superman is also, the way Nolan's is, but it doesn't. It has the fighting, the action. It appears to that Ben Affleck's had. So I think it is a combination of the both. Sure, personally, I prefer a Batman that, in general, exists in a world of Superman, but I'm still very, very excited to see this. Obviously, I enjoy all 3 of the Bale movies, so I'm ready for more in that style, but with better action. I'll admit the action's not as good in those movies, and that is what it is. And I've heard people say that Nolan just doesn't have the action skill set the way other people does, but he doesn't want to farm it out to stunt teams, or he doesn't want to have people come in and say, handle this for me. I don't know what the case is with Reeves. I haven't seen tons of his movies, but whatever he's doing clearly is working. So to me, I would say it's a mixture of the two based on the relative limited knowledge we have of the Reeves version.
Nolan fans don't want to hear this. And I say this as a Nolan fan. I am a Christopher Nolan fan, okay? I love the man's movies. Cannot think of a bad one that he has made to this point. And I'm pretty sure the ones I haven't seen yet, like Dunkirk or Tenet, which I may or may not get a chance to see if my drive-in comes through this week. I'm probably going to enjoy both of those. The man does so many things well and is an incredible auteur. His fight choreography in the Dark Knight trilogy leaves a lot to be desired. It does. I'm sorry. And that was my point to Corey. It was like, which one... tell me in which case does Batman fight better? There's no contest. The Martha Rescue set the bar for how Batman fights in live action. It does. Subjectively speaking, of course, it's all subjective. You compare that to any of his fights in the Dark Knight trilogy, and it's just not close. What Matt Reeves is doing from, like you said, the very brief window of it that we got, looks way more like Martha Rescue than it does like anything in the Dark Knight trilogy, and that's an important component. You can't ignore that when it comes to Batman. That is a very important component. It's exciting to see. Most of the trailer reactions, Brent, including ours for this network, freaked out when that happened. Mm-hmm. When he was beating the crap out of that thug. We all just Like, people got a kick out of, like, how wide my eyes were.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, you reacted. Scott and Jordan were going nuts. Tim was going nuts. It was like that we all
I just started
reacted
laughing.
to that.
Like, I didn't know how to react. I just started laughing because I was not expecting it at all.
No, none of us were. So, like, that's an important piece of it, and it definitely feels like that Reeves is taking that into account, and it's exciting to see. So, yeah, absolutely, I would say it is both for sure.
Perfect.
This next question from Xavier Newkirk. This is an interesting one. He asks, with theaters likely never returning to the way it was before, do you anticipate Endgame will end up the highest grossing movie for all time forever? My answer to that, Xavier, is very possible. It's very possible. And we just don't know it. There's a level of uncertainty. I would say that what could potentially... What's going to be interesting to see is, obviously, we got to see of all the theaters that do come back, and a number of them are starting to come back. People saw New Mutants in the theater this past weekend. Mm-hmm. And more people are going to go see Tenet. And then people have already seen Tenet worldwide. Like, theaters are starting to come back. We're starting to get some box office numbers now, as crazy as that is. But, like, we got to see how many theaters come back. We got to see what those returns look like then. And I think another component of this is based on that. Do we start to see digital VOD and home sales incorporated into the box office numbers? We've started to see a bit of that, obviously, with Trolls, the way that was reported when that blew up big for Universal. We'll see it now with Mulan when that drops on the premiered access for Disney Plus in another week.
September 4th. Yep.
So, does the box office conversation start to include those numbers? If it does, then we'll start to see whether or not home sales even approaches that number. I don't know that it will, but it's all fluid. I think it's very possible that Endgame could end up being the highest grossing and just stay there. I think it's entirely possible, but I'm not 100% confident of that. I'm mostly confident of that, but I'm not 100% confident of that.
I told you before we started that my answer to this question was I actually don't think it will. And the key part is the for all time forever. Eventually, for all time forever. No, I mean, between inflation and medical science improvements and stuff, no, I mean, eventually I think people will be able to go to the movie theaters in the numbers that they were able to go to in 2019 and earlier. If you had put a time on there for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years, for the next 20 years, I think I'd be more likely to say, yes, I think it will hold the record that long. A lot of people were saying that, like, the Avatar sequel was the next one to challenge it. Maybe. I totally understand why people thought that, but I don't think it's going to be challenging it now. Maybe it will, maybe there'll be a massive vaccine breakthrough and stuff, but as of today, I don't see anything in the next few years being able to challenge that record. But for all time, I'm not willing to say for all time. I don't need someone coming back 30 years from now saying, "Ha, you were wrong. Something beat it."
And they do that. They do that. Whatever Twitter is in 30 years from now, they absolutely... Receipts! I have a 30-year-old receipt from 2020. You were wrong.
But yes. For the foreseeable future, yeah, I do think it's going to hold that record. And honestly, I think it was going to hold that record anyway. I just think it was going to be a contest, whereas now I don't think it's going to be a contest. And even if we see movies bring in that revenue, if it's a combination of VOD and box office, it's still not comparing the same thing. Because True. What Avengers did was box office. That doesn't count the numbers it's done on VOD and Blu-rays and stuff like that. And so that's where I'm thinking about it. I don't know. I'm still just glad I got to see the movie last year. That's where I'm at. Thank God it came out when it did. If ever there was going to be this forced break in the MCU, this was the time to do it. Between phases, God.
Could you imagine if we were dealing with that in the middle of Endgame anticipation? Oh my goodness. If this had happened to your
I would have been insufferable.
Oh, yes, you would have. Yes, you would have. Jeez.
All right. Let's do this. Let's do this final question before we sign off from Recco Jet. He says, like Ray, I'm a huge sports guy, and something I've really been wondering lately is the way the current TV contracts work. Would it even be possible for one of the major 4 pro leagues to start their own streaming service or combine with something like Disney Plus with its ESPN connections as a way for someone who's cut the cord to be able to watch all games, even outside their home teams? Love the show. Thanks for making quarantine life a lot more bearable. Thank you for that final statement there. I want to hear your answer. And then we have to talk about baseball with it.
Yeah, because you're going to bring up a good point about baseball. But, yeah, I mean, as far as them making their own, I mean, I feel like in many ways they're already starting to do that. We've also heard that some of these streamers are going to do that. I mean, quite honestly, there's an avenue for Disney to do this at any time with ESPN concerning their... And they've already kind of done it with the bundles, but I mean in terms as far as like making a component of that on the service, absolutely. Most certainly they could do that with multiple leagues, whether it's NBA or... I mean, they have the monopoly right now on NBA playoffs at this point, you know, that have been going on right now. But yeah, I could definitely see it. I certainly could see the NFL doing this. The NFL kind of already has with like NFL Mobile and some of their stuff as well. You know, and there has also been talk that because of all the Turner connections with TBS and TNT, that HBO Max could even get involved with live sports at some point down the road within the next couple of years. So yeah, absolutely. Live sports, I have said for years, was always going to be a turning point with respect to the streaming wars. And when that stuff started to become available on streaming, that's when you really saw the big bite get taken out of cable, like an even bigger bite. And cable continues to lose millions of subscribers a year because people are able to watch even their live sports. Like last 2 years, I haven't needed cable to watch any of my Michigan football. All I've needed is YouTube TV, which gives me all of my ESPNs, gives me my Big Ten network, gives me Fox Sports, you know, FS1, all that stuff. So yeah. Absolutely. And Big Ten Network, that's another one. It's a Fox-owned one that if I wanted, I could get extra access and watch the hockey games and all the other competitions that don't get on national television. I can, if I want to pay, I think it's like $14.99 a month for that. I think if I wanted to do that, I can already do that. So there's already avenues in place for it as it is. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, that most certainly can get bigger. I kind of expect that to happen.
So I didn't even think about football, but for the last few years, Verizon used to have a exclusive deal with the NFL that you could stream every single NFL game, even to your phone, specifically to your phone. It didn't even work on a cellular-enabled tablet. To your phone, and even if it was in market. So, like, you know, I live in the Kansas City area. I was able to watch the Chiefs games on my phone and just stream it and watch it. And, you know, I've watched quite a few games that way because that's just been the way it worked out for me. You used to be able to sort of hack around the whole, they have AirPlay turned off so you couldn't port it up to a TV. There used to be a workaround for that worked. It doesn't anymore, but I can still watch the games that way. So, like last year, I subscribed to CBS All Access during the Chiefs season. And if the game was on CBS, which was roughly 2/3 of their games, I was able to watch it on any device I could get CBS All Access on, including my television, my iPad, my phone, whatever the case would be. If they weren't on those, then I just said, well, screw it, because the way where my TV is, I don't have a good enough antenna. It doesn't come in very well that way. So I would just watch it over my phone if I was going to watch the game. And I don't see start to finish every single Chiefs game every year. I've come to terms with that. So it's okay that it's not as good of a viewing experience as on my television for me. Now, that's a stopgap. That's not where it needs to end. That's just where we're at now. What I wanted to say is baseball kind of is already there. Not with your local market teams. They still need to work on that, but I don't remember what they call it. But baseball has a streaming service that you can basically watch. That's what I wanted to say, but I didn't know if that was something else.
Sorry, pardon me. At Bat has 2 different tiers.
Oh,
so there's like there's a basic tier that just gives you like game casts where you can see digitally. Oh, you're like, it's a diamond and it's like, oh, here, like see the count, see the pit. But then there's also an option where for a fee, you can see all out of market games.
Right.
So not your own market. I can't watch Tigers, like Detroit Tigers. I'd have to but Twins and everybody else. Yes. That's the pay model. So
and
yes.
So that's where that's already there. So.
NHL does the same thing too.
Do
NHL
they?
TV, yeah, they have you can get a season pass for a year, or when the playoffs start, you in a normal year, not this year. But I don't know what they did this year. But in the playoffs, you can pay a heavily reduced rate just to get all playoff access streaming, and that'll give you like the Sportsnet stuff, the stuff in Canada that we can't necessarily get yet here on streaming because they haven't figured that out yet. I need them to figure that out because I miss Hockey Night in Canada. But at any rate, that. Yes, so they do a similar thing.
So with that progress, with like baseball is like at the forefront of this. That's the way we need it to go. We need those services to do well, but we're not going to see, like especially the local market options, we're not going to see those until the money that they're making off of these streaming services at a minimum equals, but probably surpasses by a substantial amount, the money they can make from the traditional model of selling ads on TV. Currently, they make hundreds of millions and billions of dollars a year through that model. Until that changes, until that goes down, and it will go down over time as more people stop watching traditional. But even like the NFL app that I will watch on my phone occasionally, I get the commercials. I still see them. I will tell you that's fine. I will happily pay to see those commercials in the middle of my Chiefs games when I, watching them make a Super Bowl run again. But not everybody is that way. When they get to that point that they're able to subscribe and you can watch your local teams and you can do it on your television, no compromises of, well, you can do it, but it's on your phone only. So it's, at most the size of an iPhone screen. When there no compromises like that, you can watch it on your iPad, you can watch it on your computer, you can watch it on your television, on your 70-inch, 80-inch, whatever, 8,000K television that people have now. 8,000K, that makes sense. When you can do that, that's when we'll really start seeing those changes. And yeah, like for the Chiefs, I will subscribe. We talked about last year subscribing to, I think it's the Red Zone. It gives you every game after it's aired. And I'm like, no, like this sports is still the one thing I want to watch live.
It has to be live, yes.
It's the one thing. Yes. Like I'll be talking to my parents, and my mom will be like, don't say anything about the game. Your dad hasn't watched it yet, and he recorded it. I'm like, well, okay, so he doesn't hang out on Twitter and Facebook where you see people talking about it, so I get how he can do it. But I hang out on Twitter and Facebook, and I would be seeing stuff. So for me, it's not there yet. I also want to mention that the service that the MLB uses for this is pretty solid. And my understanding is basically ESPN bought that company that runs it. And through them, ABC has it now, Disney has it now. And that is like the bones of what became Disney Plus. And I remember on launch day, Disney Plus did have some issues for some people, but it's pretty much been rock solid ever since. And it's because they weren't starting from scratch. Yeah, they had tens of millions of subscribers right away, but they had a service with a proven history that they were building off of. So I just wanted to bring that up as well. I hope this happens. I want it. For me, I don't care about it for baseball and hockey and basketball, but other people do. And they should get to watch it that way. I care about it for football. I should get to watch it that way. I will pay for it. That's fine. Here's my money. But just give me the options. We'll get there eventually.
Yes. No, for sure. We're headed in that direction. You're absolutely right. Live sports is really the only appointment television left. Really is. Something, a little food for thought. Read this rumor yesterday that Comcast, who's already trying to, they've made their foray. They do have a streaming device. They're doing this like X1 Flex.
Oh, they were gonna do the Olympics on Peacock.
Yes, and I think they still are. That's still their plan.
Yeah, but when that happens, I'll subscribe to whatever tier I have to that lets my wife watch the Olympics on Peacock.
Right.
Because she loves them.
Right.
And it'll be the best she's ever had of watching them.
And it might be the free tier. We don't know.
Yeah.
We're not sure about that yet. But the thing is like Comcast, there's a report yesterday, there's whispers that they might be trying to get into the smart TV game.
Oh.
And that is an interesting thing to keep in mind is if these ISPs start really trying to get, one of the speculations that Tim brought this up a while back.
Do you mean an over-the-top box like Apple TV or the Fire TV sticks from Amazon?
No,
or do you mean an actual television set?
A television, like Roku TV. An actual television set.
Well, Roku TV is an operating system that a lot of smart TVs use.
Right. Well,
but I mean, like Samsung, makes actual television sets, which is a very, very low profit margin business.
Yeah, well, so does and then LG as well. Is Samsung and LG or Vizio? I think Samsung and LG are like the top two. I think.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's the actual smart TV market that they're trying. That this is all whispers, rumors.
Sure.
That they're trying to get into this. To me, when I read that, it felt like, okay, this is part of Comcast's continued transition, trying to get into this. That could most certainly translate into sports with respect to traditional, because like you just said, the idea of getting this to your television set and not just on your mobile device, that is like the migration. That's the migration that does need to occur with a lot of these apps. Okay, the mobile has predicated itself enough. You need to give people the ability to watch this in their home, right? Because that's what we're all going to do. Because, yeah, most of us are on Twitter and don't stay in the bubble, and we need to know what happened in the game.
Right.
Like, when it happened. So, yeah, that's just food for thought. But I was going to say that, in addition to the Comcast thing, there was also Tim brought up on DC Film Squadcast, as this Amazon and Roku, negotiation continues with HBO Max, he had suggested, and I completely agree with this, that at some point, if negotiations don't get any better with that, AT&T just comes out with their own box.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about that. So if they don't get on Roku and the Fire Stick or whatever Amazon calls it, I have one in my house, I don't even know what it's called. Yes, they probably should do that because you got to give your subscribers more options. Mm-hmm. The part that would just give me pause is it would be a hard sell to me as a consumer if you tell me I can buy the Apple TV, which is more expensive than all of them, and get all these different services, including HBO Max, or I can get Chromecast, which I think has it, or at least will let you play it from your phone and cast it from your phone.
Right.
To me, it would be a harder sell to... You have to buy this specific one if you want HBO. And as soon as they do that, they now have to get the other providers on board with putting their apps and content on those services. And Netflix will do it because Netflix will put it anywhere. They'd have it on a refrigerator if you'd let them do it. Netflix will put Netflix on every single platform you make it available. That'll be an easy sell. But I feel like some of the others might be a little bit harder sell. Apple TV, they might do it. It is available on other platforms now, like the Fire Stick we have in our bedroom is signed into my Apple TV account. But would Amazon do it? Like, for example, if they can't work out the deal, would Amazon be willing to put Prime Video on the AT&T service? Because now if they won't do it, if it just goes back and forth...
Right.
Now, maybe AT&T doing this would be a way to spur those. Hey, we're going to make our own box and have it on there. If you want to be on ours, we need to be on yours. Maybe that would break through some barriers. So I don't want to say it's automatically a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. There's some challenges that would have to be worked through because it's a pretty saturated market between the Apple TV, Chromecast, the Fire Stick, and not just the Roku devices that you can buy and stick into your TV, but now Roku powers almost all new smart televisions are Roku OS or whatever they call it. And so it is a pretty full market. So I'm not going to say they shouldn't do it. Just there are some challenges that you would have to be on the lookout for. Like I've told people for years, you shouldn't buy an Apple TV unless you're buying videos from Apple directly. Like there's just, you can get all the other apps on other cheaper. You can get them on the Fire Stick or Roku's or whatever. And now you can even get Apples on there. So now, at this point, the only reason I get Apples is because of how ingrained it is and things I can do with it with my Apple devices. AT&T won't really have that kind of advantage that they can push, so they would have a hard sell. Maybe that hard sell is you subscribe to our internet, we just give you this. Or, we give you the hardware for it.
That's pretty much what Comcast is doing with their current box.
Or subscribe to the television and you just get it. And so, in that case, I'm not saying they don't have moves they could make. They're just in a tough spot. If that's the route they decide to go. Should they investigate it? Yeah, they probably should. They probably should investigate it.
Yeah. Well, that's a valid point. To your point about saturation, I don't know how widespread this is, but I've seen more people getting frustrated with the Amazon and Roku situation that have actually said, I'm going to have to get an Apple TV now. because they want HBO Max.
And HBO Max just isn't. And I would tell those people, one, verify if you can do it on Chromecast, because if you can get a Chromecast. If that's all you want, you can get a Chromecast way cheaper than it. Apple TVs are like $130, $150.
They are.
Chromecast is like 100 less.
Yeah, it was just the crappy thing about that. And I've had a Chromecast. I just don't like controlling it through my phone. I like having a tangible remote.
Totally get that. In that case, the Apple TV physical remote is pretty bad. Just to make it clear to people, it's pretty garbage. Like, you basically need to be an Apple fanboy like myself to justify getting in there. And I do stuff with like AirPlaying and I work with Apple TVs at work all the time. So it's like I understand those things in and out, but they can be confusing to other people. And I use their remote too, but it's not a good remote. There's rumors of a new Apple TV on the horizon, and I'm really hoping they redesign that thing. But
well, never mind then.
It's just, but you do need to do something. And if you want to watch, I don't know, is HBO Max on Xbox and PlayStation? Honestly, I've never looked.
I haven't either. I'm not 100% certain on that, to be honest with you.
But I would tell people, if you have those, you should look there before buying new hardware, because maybe because then you could still
if they already have the systems.
Yeah, if they already have the system, don't buy an Xbox or a PlayStation just for HBO Max. At that point, you're getting into several $100s. But if you already have those systems, maybe that's a compromise you can make so you can still watch that content on your big screen TV instead of directly just on your tablet.
It does appear to be, yes.
Okay, well, good.
Definitely.
I've never watched a streamer on those platforms. I just know when I first started talking about getting a PlayStation 4, one of the thought processes was that would give us another streamer device that we could have in another room, even though that's not how it worked out. I've never streamed any movies like that from my PlayStation. But
now, if you want to talk about silly remotes, that's another conversation for another day. Media remotes for gaming systems have always been a thorn in my side.
I've seen them. I've never used them. The Xbox 360 used to be my DVD player, and I just used the Xbox remote. I never bought the media remote.
I hate it. I don't know, just something in my brain, man. Like, I need to see the play button and the rewind button and the stop button, and it's like, I don't feel right pressing Y to stop something, or pressing...
Well, if you want those buttons, technically, like, you don't see those buttons on the Apple TV remote, so...
Yeah, you're right.
You can buy third-party remotes that work with it via IR, though, so, I mean, it's...
Right.
I wouldn't say that should be the deal breaker, just it's not a pro either.
No. Fair enough. I got you.
Couple programming notes before we sign off for the day. One, Brock and I talked the other night. We talk like almost every day. We decided the other night we're going to put Marvel Squadcast on a bit of a hiatus for now. So don't delete your feeds. We do intend on it coming back, but it's like, frankly, neither of us have been able to get to it, and there just really hasn't been that much content for what we wanted to talk about on the show. There's been Marvel news, but not Marvel news that we felt like we really wanted to talk about. So... Marvel Squadcast, we're just kind of setting aside for now. And then one thing that, as a network, you may have noticed some of us tweeting about more and more, but just in case you haven't, or if you hear us say where we're at on Twitter, but you don't use Twitter, so you're never there. YouTube.com, channel Squadcast Media. As a network, we are putting more and more content up there now. Last week's fans episode in its entirety is actually up there. What you're listening to now, we're planning on putting up there, and we'll try a few more that way and see if people like it that way. Thank you for those of you who've given us feedback. Ray, absolutely stunned at the opening you put on that thing. You did not tell me. You just said you were having fun with it. You did not tell me the opening you were going to stick on it. You just said, okay, it's up. Here it is. And I played it, and it's just like jaw drop floor. Oh my gosh, this is incredible. And anyone who's seen it knows exactly why it appealed to me so much, but that aside, and I don't want to say what it is for the audio. I want you to go watch it if you haven't seen it. It is, I don't know how you did it. Some wizardry, some magic, talking about Harry Potter earlier. It's like, whatever you did, it came out incredible. And so I do want people to go see it. There is a link in the show notes just to the channel page. You can find it there. Please, even if you don't want to watch it that way. I prefer podcasts in audio format, but people like them in YouTube, so we're just trying, as a network, to give more content that way. If nothing else, go watch last week's episode of Fans or this one for the opening song, okay? The opening song, just go watch it. Trust me, it is worth your time.
Thank you. I really do. I wasn't sure. You know, it's one of those things where it's like I'm gonna do this, and I think they'll like it, but I'm not 100% certain. You never know.
Well,
like,
it blew me away.
Not, but so no, that is awesome. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. I like I've said before off air. It's literally stuff like that is literally what I do for a living. So
yeah.
I'm fortunate enough that I get to say that. But yeah. Indeed, of course, this show is a part of the Squadcast Media Network. Mm-hmm. That does include DC Film Squadcast with Tim and Scott, DC Comic Squadcast with Jordan and Chris, and DC TV Squadcast, which will be unveiling a new format.
Oh.
Stay tuned to the Twitter account this week, because a new format for DC TV Squad. Well, I have to figure out what to talk about, Brent.
You do.
None of the shows are coming back until 2021. At least not that I've been able to find. No, none of the CW stuff is coming back till 2021. And I can't think of any other show like that we've talked about. You know, that's got another season coming, like Pennyworth. I don't know when anything else is coming back. I don't think anything else is coming back this year.
The only thing I would question is Lucifer, which you've never watched.
Exactly. And that's something that I have been mulling about and may or may not have to do with the new format that I'm going to unveil, because I don't want DC TV Squadcast to go away.
Okay.
DC television is huge. So stay tuned. Pay attention to the Twitter account for that one. It's been very inactive over the last year or so. That's about to change. At any rate. So there is that. And then, of course, there is our Patreon. Thank you to all of our supporters on Patreon. We most certainly appreciate your support, and we hope that you're enjoying all the Patreon content, the movie Squadcast episodes, which I don't think we've scheduled our next one yet. We're in that sweet spot, Brent. My head is still spinning because we just did Constantine and The Rocketeer. I'm like, oh my goodness.
But I don't think either have dropped yet. So
no, I don't think.
But
you know,
to be fair, Tim and Scott did like 4 episodes covering.
Oh,
we
God,
did
yes.
one long episode. They decided to chunk it out, and
right.
It was just 4 days in a row of. I gave him some grief of, could you post it before I drive home from work so I can listen to it on the way home? But
yeah, no, yes, absolutely.
They've been a little busy with that special series they did.
For sure, and then in addition to that, there's Fans Without Borders Plus. There are some streaming movies on the horizon that Scott and I want to talk about, and who knows, depending on what goes on with this theatrical situation, we may get to start talking about some of those movies again. Again, I gotta hope that my drive-in comes through. They did with New Mutants. I'm gonna see this week if they come through with Tenet. If so,
did you go see New Mutants at the drive-in?
No,
I've looked. It's at mine, but I have not. I'm not a big drive-in fan.
I'll deal with drive-in if it's the safest. Drive-in right now is the safest way,
absolutely.
and for me where I live in Michigan, it's the only way, because there are no theaters. I would have to drive to Toledo to go to an open theater at this point to see New Mutants. So drive-in is like my only hope at this point. But New Mutants, as much as I do want to see it, despite what Rotten Tomatoes is saying.
I haven't even looked at the Rotten Tomatoes score, but people I've talked to have enjoyed it. So.
Yeah. So, but it's not. It's still one of those where it's like, you know what? I could totally wait for VOD on this.
Yeah.
Tenet, a Nolan film? Oh no, I will go to the drive-in. If it's at my drive-in, I will go. Yes, I will. And I think Scott's going to see it too, because he went and tested the waters at his theater recently. So
there's an IMAX showing at 9:00 of New Mutants tonight. I'm like, maybe at 8:30, I should just look and be like, okay, there's an awful lot of open seats, and then just take the back corner or something like that. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to. I'm with you. I want to see it. I've seen every other Fox Marvel movie in theaters. Fantastic Four movies plus the X-Men. I want to see the last one.
I hear you. Totally understandable. But yeah, so we'll keep you posted. We might end up getting to talk about theatrically released movies again on Fans Without Borders Plus. Who knows? We'll see how that goes. But yeah, so that's everything on Patreon, plus so much other content there as well. So hope everybody's enjoying it, and as always, thank you very much for your support to Squadcast Media. And as always, you go ahead with this part. This is your part.
As always, you can email us at borderlessfans@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. And we are on Twitter. I am at BrentTechPrime.
And I'm at the Flightcast. The show itself is at Borderless Fans.
Yep, and you can find links to all the shows, all the networks at squadcastmedia.com. And again, look up Squadcast Media on YouTube and let us know what you think of the content. We've got some crossover stuff we've done with the other guys. We've gotten a lot of good feedback on our Batman trailer reaction we did, so thank you to those of you who have checked it out.
All right, take it easy, guys. Stay safe out there.